questions. So now for our next speaker, Ms. Janelle Rae, who's the Business Opportunity Specialist in the SBA Dallas-Fort Worth District Office. Please welcome her with a round of applause.
All right, so why should you be interested in the federal government contracting program? I want you to look at these dollar numbers up here. Every year, the U.S. government has $500 billion in contracts awarded each year. That's a lot of money, $500 billion. Well, there's new regulations out now where 23% of these prime contracting dollars are set aside to small businesses. Did you know that small businesses represent 99% of all the employer firms in the United States? They've been responsible for 64% of job creation over the past 15 years. They account for 50% of the private, non-farm gross domestic product. And these small business owners, they hire 40% of the high-tech workers. They produce 13 times more patents per employee than large patenting firms. That's all of you guys. That's all these small business owners in the United States. Okay. The small business contracting between the U.S. government with Small Business Administration and the small business owners, it's a win-win situation. For the U.S. government, we get to work with America's most forward-leaning, nimble, and innovative companies. For you, the small business owner, you get to increase revenue and to build your scale operations and create more jobs. Okay, we talked about, you saw that big number up on the board, $500 billion of contracting money per year. Well, of that $500 billion, 23% of the prime contracting dollars goes to small businesses, and then of that 23%, 5% goes to small disadvantaged businesses. 5% of the prime dollars goes to small women-owned small businesses, and then 3% to the hub zone. And we're going to go into more detail on the hub zone because you may be interested in that as well. Also, 3% of the prime dollars goes to the service-disabled veteran-owned businesses as well. So you need to ask yourself, is federal contracting, is that right for you? First, you need to analyze the federal marketplace. What I mean by that is, depending on what kind of business you have, are there actually contracting opportunities out there for you? Then you need to research the procurement forecast, visit the small business development centers, which SBA pays, the SBDC. They're free for you. Everything having to do with the SBA 8A contracting program is free. There are no charges. The SBDCs are people who will help you to fill out any necessary paperwork for you to get all of your certifications. They also help you with your application for the Small Business Administration 8A program. Again, they work for us. We pay them. You don't. It's a free service to you. Go ahead and change it. Okay, these are the questions you need to ask yourself to see if you're eligible to participate in the SBA 8A program. Are you a small business? If you have a cell phone and you'd like to take a picture of some of these slides because of these websites, I encourage you to do so because these are some really important websites. You can go to the www.sba.gov and you can look it up to see if the particular business that you own, according to what your 3-year annual revenues are, whether or not you qualify as a small business. Some businesses, instead of the 3-year annual revenue, we go by the number of employees that you have full-time that are working. And the way that you find the size standard for your business is the sba.gov/size. There are many different government certifications that you may be eligible for, and I encourage you to check into these, do your own research, see if you can become certified in them, and the reason why is because when we were talking earlier about the $500 billion in the contracts and the 23% of all that being set aside, the contracting officers, when they're looking at a set-aside program, a contract, and they're looking for someone to let that contract to, there's nothing they would like better than to be able to check off more than one mark per contract. So what that means is, if you are certified as a SBA 8A contractor, a woman-owned contractor, a minority business contractor, and they contract out to you, then they get to put a check by all those marks. And their performance ratings now, they're held to actually 23% of all their contracts have to go to all those different minority contractors, small business owners. The self-certifications, the service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, that's a self-certification. And again, here's some more of those websites that you might want to take a picture of your cell phone if you'd like to. SBA.gov/SDVOSB. The economic disadvantaged women-owned small business. Small disadvantages businesses. So, again, am I eligible for the 8A SBA program? You must be a small business by SBA size standards, and you go to that website and look it up to see if your business is. Your business must be owned at least 51% by U.S. citizens. It must be controlled and managed on a full-time basis by individuals who must meet the SBA requirement for disadvantage. And this is going to be proving both the social disadvantage as well as the economic. In one of the next slides, we'll go into more detail on that. The business must also demonstrate a potential for success, and the principals must show good character. Okay. Social disadvantage criteria. Socially disadvantaged individuals are those who have been subject to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias within American society because of their identities as members of groups and without regard to their individual qualities. The social disadvantage must stem from circumstances beyond their control. The following individuals are socially disadvantaged. This list, and I'm not going to read it because a whole bunch of them I can't pronounce. But if you're a member of any of on this list, then you are automatically considered socially disadvantaged, and you don't have to do anything else to prove it. Okay. Now, if you're not a member of that previous list, you might also be determined socially disadvantaged if you can do this. An individual who is not a member of one of the groups presumed to be socially disadvantaged must establish individual social disadvantage by a preponderance of evidence. Now, what does that mean? It means that you have to show to SBA that you were discriminated against, and it was socially in some manner. And I'm going to give you a real quick example of this. Typically speaking, white females are not considered socially disadvantaged. However, a white female who is in owns a construction business, there's not very many of that. And if they can prove that they applied for several contracts and that their experience was better than the male that was given the contracts, then that can be the preponderance of evidence. Also, again, typically speaking, like a white male isn't considered socially disadvantaged. But what I've seen from working up in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to give this example, there was one white male he was not a serviceman, but he had had some kind of accident, and he was burned terribly, and he was horribly scarred. The man was a very hard worker. He was very good at what he did. But the problem was when he went out to talk to the contractors to try to get contracts and stuff, because of the way that he looked, he was discriminated against. All right? So there are ways around if you don't meet that first list. So I encourage you to try. Okay, go ahead. Now, the economic disadvantage, remember you've got to meet two. You've got to meet the socially disadvantaged, and you have to meet the economically disadvantaged. It's actually easier to meet the economically than you would think. Your personal income cannot exceed $250,000 per year, averaged over 3 years. Your adjusted net worth must be less than $250,000. Now that is excluding your net worth in your primary residence. It's also excluding the value of your ownership in your business. And your total assets cannot exceed $4 million. Hub Zone program. This is another certification program that SBA has that you might be interested in, especially if your office for your business is down in an older part of the city. You must be a small business by SBA size standards. You must be owned and controlled at least 51% by the U.S. citizens. Principal office must be located within a hub zone, and 35% of its employees must reside in a hub zone. Again, hub zone is another certification where when the contractor goes to let to you a contract, and you've got minority, women-owned, disadvantaged, hub zone, that's another thing that they can check off if they give you a contract. So you want to get everything that you can. The way that you get the hub zone certification is, again, your principal office must be located within the hub zone. And the way you know whether it is or not is if you go to sba.gov/hub zone, there is a map, and you put in the zip code of the address where your office is, and this map will come up and it will show your building according to its address and whether or not it's located in the hub zone. But typically the hub zone areas, and that stands for historically underutilized business zone, they're usually large cities and downtown areas where the businesses have kind of been pushed out by crime and things. And the reason we're trying to get people to get back in it is because, as you know, if you can move jobs into high crime areas and produce income, and you've got economic coming in, then you push away your crime. Hub zones can also be out in rural areas. So if any of you live outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, out in the rural areas, they have hub zone areas too. Okay, so what is a small business besides the size standards? And the size standards, again, it depends on your sales over your previous 3 years and or how many employees you have working for you. It depends on what kind of business that you own. You have to be organized for profit. So if you have a nonprofit organization, you're not going to be eligible. You have to be in it to make money, because that's what we want you to do, is make money, hire more people, grow, hire more people, create jobs. Your place of business has to be within the United States. Now, you can have a sub-office outside of the United States, but most of your business has to be done inside the United States, buying parts or whatever made inside the United States. Also, you cannot be a business that imports, because the whole thing is we want you to create jobs. So we want you to make the stuff here, and you can export all day long. Please export. I mean, sell it out, get their money, bring their money in. But when you import stuff, then the people in the other countries are the ones that's making the products, and they're making money, and we're all here trying to make the money in the United States. It has to be independently owned and operated, and you cannot be dominant in your field. Okay. Service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. This certification is for people who have been in the service and they are disabled, and you do have to show through the Veterans Administration that you are disabled. You'll have to prove that. The requirements are the same in that it has to be unconditionally and directly owned, at least 51% by the socially disadvantaged people, the veteran, and the veteran must hold the highest officer position, and the management and daily business operations must be controlled by one or more service-disabled veterans. Now, we do have, in the case of a service-disabled veteran that was so severely injured that he or she are not able to talk to people on a daily basis, then if that's the case, then we can allow someone to do the daily talking and managing the business on a daily basis by someone else who's not disabled, as long as it's the disabled veteran's brain. It's him. It's his mind that's making the decisions. He may not be the front person, but he or she is the one that's making the decisions. Okay. Women-owned small business must be at least 51% directly owned and controlled by one or more women, must be primarily managed by one or more women. The women must be U.S. citizens, and the business must be small according to the SBA size standards. Economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, similar to what we were already talking about. In addition to the requirements of the women-owned small business, the woman must be economically disadvantaged. Is presumed economically disadvantaged if she has a personal net worth of less than $750,000. And again, that net worth does not include the value of your residence or the value of your business. Your adjusted gross income is $350,000 or less, averaged over 3 years, and your assets do not exceed $6 million. Okay. Small disadvantaged business must be a small business by SBA size standards, owned by 51% U.S. citizens or naturalized citizens, must be controlled, managed on a full-time basis by individuals who meet the SBA requirement for disadvantage. Personal net worth, again, $750,000, not including the equity in your house or your business. And again, if you have a cell phone, you might want to take a picture of this page because these are some more important websites. How do you identify contracting opportunities? Okay, this is how you go and you get the contracts. You got to do some marketing on your own. You need to visit www.sam.gov and get registered in the federal database first. And when you do that, I'm going to add this just from experience working with SBA. A lot of people will go in and they'll register in the SAM. While you're doing so, there's going to be a question there, and it's going to ask you mark yes or no on it. It's going to ask if you want your information to go over to the FedBizOps website. You do. Mark yes. You need to obtain your NAICS codes. Again, www.census.gov/EOS. I'd take a picture of that or write it down if you'd like. In current contracting opportunities, you can visit www.fbo.gov. That's the FedBizOps. That's what that stands for. And then there's another one for the military on the bottom. Okay. And you need to conduct your own market research, and these are some tools available to you for you to go out and find contracts. I would take a picture of this. I'm not going to go over all of it, but if you're interested, I'd take a photo of that because of those websites. And down at the bottom is that dynamic small business search. That's real important for you to be on that because the contracting officers, when they have a set-aside contract come up and they can just give it to a 8A company without having to advertise it to other people, they go to the DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search page, and they look for businesses that meet the small requirements that are 8A or women-owned or HUB-zone or whatever. So you want to make sure that you're on that website. Okay. The Federal Procurement Database System is an educational tool. You need You might want to take a picture of this and get that website as well. There's more than 50 reports that you can run based on 160 specialized fields, so you can be looking for some contracts that are out there. Okay. Why network? Networking is really important. I think some of the other ladies that were up here earlier talking, and they all discussed how important networking is. Joint ventures. You can have joint ventures with other small businesses. If you're networking and you meet some other small business owners that have a business that's a similar line of work than yours, but maybe they've got experience doing something that you don't have as much experience with, you can make a joint venture with them, go into a joint venture and then go together to get a contract. And between the two small businesses together, then they'll cover all the experience required to get the contract. Same thing with SBA's Mentor Protege program. The way that works is that the mentor is a larger business that does not meet the small business requirements, but if they go into a Mentor Protege program with a small business, then they are then able, they will be considered small and can go out a contract that's set aside for small businesses. And the small business owner, what you get out of that is you have the opportunity to go after like $100 million contract that you probably would not have had the capacity to have been eligible to have gone after. You also get experience working with the larger business. Here are some more additional available resources. We have the GC, that's Government Contracting Classroom. It's a free online training course. Here's the website. The Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. All of these are free. SBA pays for them. You might want to take a picture of that and then you can Google it. Here's some more resources. Take a picture with your phone. Okay, that's the end. Typically I'd ask for questions, but we're going to do it at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we're going to present you with a plaque. Could we have Tantex President Narasimha Reddy and the Board of Trustees Ramna Putler and Srinivas Reddy? Thank you again, Ms. Rae, for your speech. Can we have another round of applause for her?